Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for an all new episode recap of today's Days of Our Lives, September 16, 2025. So we start off with the whole thing with Sarah and Philip, and Sarah basically again badgering Philip about whether or not Xander assaulted him. Again, if he's consistently saying that Xander didn't do nothing and it was a random person, da 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 da, at this point, just drop it, right? Stop trying to bust the person that you are married to, that's the father of your child, and then to be distasteful at you guys' daughter's birthday party. So Xander is listening in on it, and Philip was actually telling Sarah that he saved his life, and he made a complete 180, all of that. So Xander comes in, of course Sarah's there looking stupid, like, oh my gosh, Xander, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have judged you or assumed the worst of you. And Xander's like, at this point, he's just tired of this, right? So Sarah's like, can you forgive me? And Xander gets a phone call from Alex saying that, look, the press conference is a whole nightmare. Tony basically sabotaged the whole thing, basically saying that he's going to do a lawsuit against Xander and Philip because of, alleged fraud with the whole company merger, right? So now Xander's like, are you kidding me? So Xander tells Philip and Sarah what's going on, and then, they abruptly left, right? Now back to the press conference, as Tony, had to be, the person to create some drama there, right? Leo is also on board because, again, he's doing his investigative journalism, whatever, and he's there with the scoop and all that. So Tony's saying that, look, I'm all for, companies supporting local businesses, but, speaking of local businesses, I'm going to file a lawsuit against Titan Demira for alleged fraud and all that. So Alex is checking Tony like, hey, like, where you coming from, left field with all of this, right? Like, so Tony said that, look, it's about time, and you need to reach out to Xander and Philip that if they don't want this to play out in court, they need to come find me and we settle this as men. And Gabby overheard this through the social media, and she is there in the background looking at what's going on. And Stephanie had to close the conference and thank everybody for coming out and apologize for the mayhem and all of that. So of course, all I'm seeing is that everybody, Stephanie and Alex is looking at, everybody looking at Gabby, bolting off after Tony. And I'm saying nobody's thinking that, hey, maybe Gabby is in cahoots with Tony, like even Alex. Like, I'm so surprised that he didn't have a flashback of Gabby asking for a pen when she was in the office, looking for Xander, right? And even Stephanie saw her walk up. And I'm saying nobody think that, maybe she was working along with Steve. Like, is it that far-fetched? Because even Leo was even asking her later on, like, hey, what do you know about this whole thing? Because you ran after Tony, like, hey, you invested, right? So something don't add up, right? Now, Chad meets up with Tio, or Tio connects with him. It's been a while. They catch up talking about families and losses and the business, everything, right? So he asks about the Demira Titan merger, and he's saying to Chad, like, how can this happen, right? So he said, between EJ being comatose and Kristen being in custody, Xander and Philip took the time to really go out and merge these companies together. So Tio is like, what about you? Why don't you take a crack at it? So he's like, look, I've been there, done that. It's not my, it's not what I'm interested in now. I'm interested in the newspaper business, and I want to create an honest legacy for my children, and that's just what it is, to honor their mom and all that. So Theo, at first he didn't understand, but then now he understands maybe that's the way he needs to go. So he asks him how the kids doing after the loss of their mom. It's been 3 years. He tells them that they're coping, and then it's helpful with Julie being around. As much as she's very she's very overly invested in his personal life, he still is thankful for her being there for him and the kids, right? So he asked him if everything is going well socially, and said he doesn't, he's not inclined to really tell Theo about that, but he said, it's just really kids and work. Of course, Theo think there's more to it. He also was showing Theo pictures of Charlotte, but before he could do that, he saw the social media thing with Tony doing the lawsuit against Attack in the Mirror. So, they're both like surprised that, Tony actually went for the jugular and went ahead with it, right? So now, Chad is saying the mayor needs a fresh face, a young face, somebody that has bold ideas, somebody that will turn the company around. And, they talk about how the company, how Stefano would be rolling his grave to think that this merger was possible, like he'd be ringing necks and all that, right? So while that's going on outside of the pub, Gabby tracks down Tony, and Gabby's like, how come you never gave me the heads up? So Tony said, look, I had to take the opportunity while it's hot. Like, I heard about Kate's press conference, and what better way to just, tell the media that, look, I'm coming for heads, right? So she is applauding his ideas and everything, but she said, like, don't forget me, don't forget our plan. So it's like, just be patient, right? It's all gonna work out in the end, right? So anyway, she said she almost feels sorry for them, but I am saying I'm hoping that Tony definitely, stab Gabby in the back. She deserves it, because later on he sees Theo and he talks to Theo about, have you thought about what we discussed, right? So he said, I'm still thinking about it. So I'm assuming that maybe he's thinking of making Theo the actual CEO and just was using Gabby for getting the dirt, right? But I'm all here for it. I am all here for that route. Now, Xander and Philip are brainstorming like how to deal with this thing, right? Because now Tony's coming for heads, coming with this lawsuit. It can't go to court because of the details that's involved. And while they're talking amongst each other, Alex comes in and he's blaming Alex, like, how come you let this happen, you let Tony do this? And he said, look, like, I couldn't do nothing savage, like the media was watching. And he's like blaming Alex and Stephanie for their incompetence, basically not going through with this prior, right? So now he's upset and he's like, you know what, screw this. So he just storms out, right? Before that, he also blamed Philip, like, look, at the end of the day, it's not our fault that this came to light. Like, Philip is to blame for fraud, right? And Philip agrees, he takes accountability. So Philip is saying, like, did you have to be that hard on Alex? So he's like, look, Alex and Stephanie are definitely incompetent. So of course Xander, when he's angry, he's deflecting on other people. He's gonna put the blame on everybody else, right? So Philip said, anybody to blame, it's just me, right? I shouldn't have, put out that forged letter and all of that. So Xander is on the phone with the lawyers, and of course they didn't sign the paperwork. So now, Tony didn't put out the lawsuit yet officially, but at the same time the things are not signed. So now, things can be a bigger mess than it already is. So now they're thinking, like, what is the plan? So he's saying, maybe we need to make a deal with the devil. So they called Tony and they said, like, we need to meet now. And Tony's like, look, I'm on some kind of, I guess he said, a lunch date with Anna. We'll talk tomorrow and tell you the date and time. And I'm like, okay, Tony, okay, call the shots. So anyways, Xander, of course, he is taking his steps from therapy really seriously, being calm, and Philip is applauding him, and he's like, look, don't hold your breath. I could definitely lose my cool at any time right now, right? But he's holding it in and, calming down himself, and figuring out things, right? So back at the Kirakas mansion, Sarah is talking to Maggie about, what happened with Tony's, suing Philip and Xander for fraud. And she's blaming herself because, if she had just been honest from the get-go, this wouldn't have happened. And of course, Maggie's there, not letting her daughter take accountability for her own actions. And I'm sick of it because this is why Sarah is who she is, because you don't call her out on her bull, right? And she's saying that she even talked to Philip. She asked him that if Xander, assaulted him over and over, and she kept trying to bust her husband, and turns out he didn't do it, and she feels completely bad about it. You should completely feel bad, not necessarily about this, but overly doing it. And also the fraud thing, you should have been honest from the get-go, right? Because that is why he is not trusting you. He feels betrayed because you didn't trust him enough to handle this better, right? If you knew he was like this, you shouldn't have went ahead and married him a second time. You know who he was. Like, you had a choice, right? So I don't want to hear it about, oh, Xander this and Xander that, right? And Maggie was saying, oh, you did it for the right cause and because he was angry, and you know of his past actions of violence and who he used to be and his temperament. You did the right thing and blah blah blah. And now Sarah's feeling guilty because she shouldn't have proceeded it with this way, and now it's affecting her marriage, it's affecting the company now, and she feels bad about it, right? So Maggie's saying, like, look, now is there a way for reconciliation? So she said, between me with this fraud thing and then Xander not trusting me, I don't think it's possible. But Maggie believes where there's love there's hope. You two still love each other, so maybe it's possible. So Sarah is thinking, hey, let's see, right? Now, this Gabby comes home and, Leo is typing out his, I guess, press release from the conference. So, she's asking him, like, what's going on? So you're feeling really good about yourself. So he said, yeah, I thought that it would be a waste of time to go to this press conference over this novel, but, I'm glad I came and saw what Tony did. And, now this is worth journaling about. So he asked her, like, hey, like, why were you running down Tony like that? Like, how are you invested? So she said, look, I don't want my company to be like collateral damage, when this lawsuit comes out and all that. I'm definitely invested in how my company will, survive after that. So that's why I went and asked Tony, what is he up to, right? So of course, Leo takes it for now. I don't think he fully believes it, but he accepts it for now. So at some point he asks her a personal question like, hey, how can I be there more to Harvey? Because Harvey told me about what happened to his daughter, and I just want to know how can I help him through this, right? So Gabby, it was a very beautiful moment between the two of them, and Gabby said, look, all I can do is just love him and be there for him, and regardless of how I feel about you, I'm actually glad that you're being there for him and he has somebody to lean on, right? Now it's a whole fallout between Stephanie and Stephanie and Alex. You'd think that it's all lovey-dovey now, but it's all big fallout right there at Stephanie's place. So Stephanie's surprised to see him back home. She was thinking that she would see him later on tonight because of what happened. So he said, no, I came back because at this point, Xander is upset with me. And, he's, of course, because of everything, he's deflecting it on both of us. Like, we should have been more competent, all of that. And Stephanie said, like, look, we did what we could do. Like, I definitely advised him to go ahead with, making Philip his legal CEO. And he took his sweet time on that. Like, I did what I could do at the time. So, of course, Alex is under a lot of stress, and he's now putting it on Stephanie and saying, like, look, like, you should have just not kept the fraud to yourself all these months ago, all that. So she's like, yeah, you're right, maybe I should have not kept it or held it down for Sarah and Philip. I should have just been up front and let Philip be exposed for what he did, right? So it's all back and forth, and he's now blaming her dad because she's keeping her dad's secret and not outing him as well. She said, at the end of the day, like, I couldn't do nothing regarding him. Like, he's not going to out his client. And he swears up and down he wasn't the one who bugged the room. It wasn't the Demare that hired him, right? So she just wished that she knew who was really behind it. But again, her hands are tied. She did what she could do, right? He is saying that, look, like, I wish we knew the person. So, she's getting defensive about it. She's trying to protect her dad in the midst of it. She's saying that she believes him. Of course, Alex is looking for something to blame because now Xander is on his head. And, now it's affecting their relationship in a sense. So at some point, he said he's going back to his own apartment. So I don't know what happens with them. But that is it, guys. Comment below your thoughts on today's episode. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys tomorrow.